The sky over the alien city turned red. Sirens screamed, lights blinked, and everyone started running. Shops closed in panic. Security bots rolled into the streets. Civilians rushed into bunkers. Holding their children close, screams filled the air as the first laser blast hit the ground, sending smoke and dust flying. But one man didn't move. He stood still in the center of the road, staring at the chaos. His name was Ethan. A simple human engineer, working at the spaceport for a small salary. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't even have armor. Then he saw her, a young alien girl. Maybe in her early 20s, with glowing blue skin and silver hair. She stood frozen beside a crashed transport cart, her eyes wide with fear. People pushed past her. No one stopped. No one helped. Another blast shook the ground, even closer this time. Ethan moved without thinking. He sprinted toward her as another laser blast came from the sky. It was heading straight toward her. She looked up, her body frozen, too scared. To run, he reached her in time. He threw himself over her. Pushing her to the ground, the blast hit his back. Sending pain through every nerve in his body, he screamed, but didn't let go of her. His arms were shaking, but he stayed on top of her like a shield. The blast burned through his jacket, scorching. His skin, and then another one followed. His body jerked. Blood splattered on the pavement. He gasped and coughed, his vision fading, but still. He didn't move off her. Kari couldn't speak. She couldn't understand what this human was doing. Why would he throw himself in front of her? They weren't friends. They didn't even know each other's names. She felt warm blood dripping. On her face from his wounds, the noise of ships roared above them. Enemy drones zoomed past, scanning for survivors. But then a blue shield appeared over their bodies. A rescue team had arrived. Soldiers ran in, shouting orders, and pulled them out. Kari held Ethan's hand, refusing to let go. Her heart was pounding, her mind confused. She kept hearing his voice from earlier that morning. He had smiled and offered to fix the broken power line near her station. He had joked that humans don't run from sparks. Now he had taken real sparks, deadly ones, and he was dying. Inside the medbay, the doctors looked at Ethan and shook their heads. "Too much damage," one of them said. "His body can't survive that kind of blast." Said another. They were ready to give up, but then something strange happened. Kari's hand was still holding his, and her body began to glow faintly. Energy flowed through her skin into Ethan. The machines beeped. His heart started again. The medics jumped in shock, rechecking the vitals. "What's going on?" One asked. This is ancient energy," said the chief doctor. "It hasn't been seen for generations." Kari didn't hear them. Her eyes were locked on Ethan's face. His chest moved just slightly, but enough. Tears filled her eyes. She had lived her whole life thinking humans were selfish and weak. But this one was different. He had no reason to save her. No training, no orders, nothing. He simply acted and nearly died, and somehow, she had brought him back. Later, when Ethan lay unconscious in recovery, soldiers surrounded his bed. The alien commander, a tall woman with glowing armor, looked at Kari coldly. "Why did he protect you?" she asked. Kari didn't answer right away. She didn't have the answer herself. But deep inside, something told her this was only the beginning. As she sat beside him, watching his slow breathing, she whispered, "You're not a coward, human. You're the bravest soul I've ever seen." And outside the medbay window, in the sky still dark with smoke, a new signal blinked from the enemy fleet. They weren't done yet. And they had just noticed something strange about the human. Who didn't run away? Ethan's body should have shut down within seconds. The medics had seen laser wounds like his before, and no one had survived, not even their strongest soldiers. They wrapped him in biogel and placed him under stasis, expecting only a few. Last breaths before everything ended, but his heart refused to stop beating. Kari sat beside the medical bed, her fingers wrapped tightly around Ethan's hand. His skin was cold. But there was something else, something humming under the surface. The machines beside him blinked wildly, confused by what they were reading. Heart rhythm, unstable, blood. Pressure dropping, yet the brain still active. One medic leaned closer and said softly, "He should have died by now." And then Ethan moved, just a little, just a twitch of his fingers. But it made Kari jump from her seat, the glow on her. Skin shimmered again, brighter this time, and it pulsed in waves toward Ethan's body. Like a connection had formed between them. One deeper than touch, the doctors ran scans. Their faces tense with fear and confusion. This kind of energy hadn't been seen in their lifetime. They called it the spark of the ancients, a dormant energy believed to be extinct, past. Through bloodlines now thought dead, but Ethan, a human, was showing signs of activation. Kari didn't understand how it was possible. Her people had always believed humans were physically weak, emotionally unstable, barely tolerated in alien cities. But this one not only took to direct blast, he lived through them. And now something in her was reacting to him like he was kin. She remembered the stories from her childhood, old legends, about an ancient bond between two worlds, aliens and humans. Once allies, once connected by something far greater than trade or treaties. Something lost in war and silence. Something no one dared speak of now. Kari looked at Ethan and whispered, "Why you? Why now?" But deep in her heart, she feared she already knew the answer. He had awakened something in her blood, and maybe in his too, and the galaxy would not ignore that. Suddenly, the door to the medbay opened with a hiss. Armed guards entered, followed by a tall figure with a golden crest on her armor. It was Commander Glamora, leader of the local military forces. Her eyes locked on Ethan, then turned sharply to Kari. "What happened on the street?" Glamora asked, her voice cold, sharp as a blade. "Why would a human risk himself for you?" Kari stood, but didn't answer. Glamora stepped closer, her tone sharper. "Did you activate the bond? Is this a setup?" Kari shook her head slowly. "He just saved me," she whispered. "I didn't ask him to. He didn't even know who I was." The commander narrowed her eyes. "Then this is worse than I thought," she muttered. "The energy is waking up again, and it chose a human." The guards looked at each other nervously. Words from old tales were coming back to life. Things their parents had only whispered in fear. The spark, the great union, the lost alliance, forgotten names, but now breathing again. Through this bleeding human on a medbed, Glamora gave one last warning. "If this boy wakes up and causes chaos, you'll answer for it?" She turned and left. Leaving tension behind like smoke after a blast, Kari sat again, still holding Ethan's hand. Her grip firmer now. Hours passed, and then Ethan's eyelids moved. Just slightly, Kari leaned in. Her breath caught in her throat. His lips parted, and he whispered one word. "Run." His voice was hoarse, broken, but filled with fear. She shook her head. "No," she whispered back. "I'm not running either." Outside, the city was calming down. But above it, in orbit, a shadow loomed. Not from the enemy rebels, but from something older. Something ancient that had sensed the spark returning, deep in the void. Machines, long asleep, began to turn. Signals long silent began to ping again. And the stars listened closely. Kari didn't know it yet, but by saving her, Ethan had changed everything. Their lives, their world, and maybe even the fate of the galaxy. And this was only the beginning. The guards thought she was just a scared girl caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. A common civilian, a background life among the millions on the alien planet. But they were wrong, so wrong that if they had known the truth, they would never turned their backs on her. Kari watched over Ethan, still weak but breathing steadily now. Every moment he stirred made her heart pound. She had lied to everyone about who she was. She had to, for her own safety. And now she was starting to wonder if the truth could stay hidden any longer, back in her youth. Kari was never allowed to go to schools or cities like other girls. She was kept in underground halls, trained in old languages, ancient symbols, and secrets that hadn't been spoken outside her family for generations. Her name wasn't even her real one, not in full. She was Karithal Saran, the last living daughter of the House of Saran, the bloodline believed to be wiped out during the royal purges. Her people had been hunted, burned, erased from every database. Her parents had died protecting her from the same fate, and she had been running and hiding ever since. When Ethan stepped between her and the laser blast, she felt something deep. Inside her shift, like a door that had been locked for centuries, finally creaked open. It wasn't just bravery that saved her. It was something older, something sacred, something that her family had sworn to protect with their lives. Now, Ethan was carrying it in his blood, without knowing it, and every moment that passed made her more sure of what had happened. He had triggered the bond. The ancient right between her kind and the lost human line. A connection of energy, memory, and something dangerously close to destiny. That night, Kari left the medical center quietly, covering her face with a hood and walking deep into the restricted levels of the city, through dark tunnels and maintenance shafts until she reached a sealed door with no markings. She pressed her hand to it, and it opened without a sound. Inside was a forgotten chamber, built long before this city had risen. It was filled with soft blue light and floating crystals that pulsed with memory data. This place was once sacred, and now it was hers alone. She stepped forward and placed her hand on a pedestal in the center. A voice filled the room instantly. "Royal?" "Blood confirmed," it said. "Do you wish to access the legacy files?" Kari hesitated, then whispered, "I need to know if a human can carry the bond." The room responded by shifting the crystals around her, showing glowing images of past unions. Alien royalty and human protectors walking side by side. Their energy shared, their power united. "Yes," the voice said finally. "A human can still carry the bond, but only if his heart is pure. And his sacrifice is true." Kari fell to her knees, tears in her eyes, because she knew now that Ethan had met both conditions the moment he shielded her without knowing who she was. But it wasn't just power he had taken into himself, was a target. And the ones who had hunted her family would sense it soon. They always did, and when they came, they would kill without asking questions. As she left the chamber, she felt the weight of old responsibility crash back onto her shoulders. No more hiding, no more pretending. She had to protect Ethan now. Not just because he saved her, but because their lives were now tangled in something greater, something cosmic, something dangerous. Back at the medical center, Ethan finally opened his eyes fully. The pain was still there, but he could move. He saw Kari return. Her eyes filled with something new, something stronger than fear. Something close to purpose. "You're awake," she said gently, sitting beside him. He gave her a weak smile. "Thought I was dead," he whispered. She nodded. "You almost were. But you pulled something ancient out of both of us." He blinked slowly, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. She leaned closer, voice low and serious. "I'm not just some girl," she said. "I'm royal blood, hidden from the world, and now you carry my people's energy inside you." Ethan tried to sit up, but winced. "That sounds like something people will want to kill me for," he said, with a dry chuckle. "They will," Kari replied softly. "They already know." Just then, a distant boom shook the building. The lights flickered, and alarms screamed once more. Outside, dark ships appeared in the sky, not rebel ships, but hunters from long ago. their symbols glowing red. The very same ones etched into the stones of Kari's childhood nightmares. Kari grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered, "If we stay, we both die," and without another word, she helped him to his feet, injured or not, and together they disappeared into the tunnels below, not as strangers anymore but as fugitives, bound by fate. Running from enemies that had waited a long time for this moment. His face was on every screen in the galaxy, blinking slowly across terminals, billboards, and bounty networks. But the reward wasn't credits or riches, it was technology, unknown power, a living secret that had no price tag. And the one who carried it didn't even understand what he had. Ethan stumbled through the back alleys of the alien city, his side burning with pain. Each step slower than the last. Kari walked beside him, silent, hooded, always watching the shadows. She had seen this kind of fear before, the kind that grows when the entire galaxy wants your blood. She pulled him into an abandoned repair shop, locked the doors, and sat him down. His body was still healing, far too slowly. "We have maybe 2 hours before someone tracks us here," she said, her voice tight. "They're tracing your blood." "Signal now." Ethan gave a half smile. "So? No time for breakfast." She didn't smile back. On the wall, a flickering screen played a newsfeed. The announcer's voice cold and robotic. Human male identified as bonded with royal bloodline. It said, "Threat level. Extreme. Capture alive. Termination permitted." If resisted, Ethan leaned back against the wall. "Alive or dead, huh? That's nice." Kari didn't answer. She was thinking too fast to joke now. They had escaped death twice already, but this was bigger than a few assassins or drones. The bounty had changed things. Now, mercenaries, bounty hunters, warlords, and even governments wanted him, not for who he was, but for what he was becoming. Kari took out a small, old data chip from her belt, placed it into a cracked console, and showed Ethan a map. "There's a place in the outer void, called Valdros," she said. "It's dead space now, but it used to be a sanctuary for the bonded ones." Ethan stared at the glowing mark on the screen. "Why would we go somewhere that's dead?" he asked. "Because the dead can't betray us," she replied. And before he could argue, the door shook with a hard bang. Someone had found them already. Kari pulled out a pulse knife, handed Ethan a shock pistol, and said quietly, "Don't try to be a hero this time." But he only grinned. Too late. The wall exploded inward, and 3 bounty hunters entered, heavily armored and fast. Kari moved like lightning, slashing one across the neck. Ethan fired his pistol with shaking hands, missing the first shot but hitting the second. The room filled with smoke and sparks, and the last hunter lunged toward Ethan with a roar. Then something inside Ethan snapped, not with fear but power. His eyes flickered blue, just for a second, and the hunter's armor shorted out as if hit by a storm. The enemy fell, twitching to the ground, smoke rising from his suit. Kari stared at Ethan in shock. "You used the spark," she whispered. But Ethan looked just as confused. "I didn't mean to." They didn't wait to see who else was coming. They ran through the back, jumped onto an old hoverbike, and rode into the deeper levels of the city, where law didn't exist and credits meant nothing. They passed gangs, wrecks, broken bots, and silent watchers, but no one stopped them. Not yet. Hours later, they reached the edge of the freight yard, where broken ships waited like graves. Kari pointed at one of them, a cargo hauler from centuries ago, rusted, ugly, but still flyable. "We're taking that," she said. Ethan blinked. "Does it even have fuel?" "No," she replied, "but I can steal some," while Kari disappeared into the shadows. Ethan stood by the ship, staring up at the stars, wondering how his life had flipped in just 2 days. He had been a nobody, fixing panels and drinking cheap synth coffee. Now he was a walking weapon, hunted like a beast, protected by a royal alien girl who trusted him more than anyone. Kari returned, carrying a glowing power cell, her hands stained with grease. She climbed into the pilot seat and motioned him to follow if we make it to Valdros, she said. I'll show you what your power really is. Ethan sat beside her, buckled in, and said softly, and if we don't make it? She looked at him for a long second, then said, then we'll make sure someone remembers we tried, as the ship roared to life. A signal flared in the bounty networks again, now showing new footage of Ethan using the spark. The bounty doubled. Instantly, and across the stars, eyes opened wide. Captains loaded weapons. And hunters marked their targets, but somewhere, far, far away. In a forgotten place where stars didn't shine and silence ruled. Something old began to stir. Machines blinked after centuries of sleep. Data stirred. And a voice long buried whispered, the bond lives again, and it all began with one human who didn't run away. The ship landed where maps went blind, where sensors stopped working and time felt slower. Black clouds drifted over dead planets, and abandoned satellites spun like silent ghosts. Kari called this place Valdros. But Ethan could tell right away, wasn't just dead space. It was something older than silence itself. They stepped out of the ship into deep blue mist. No sounds, no birds, no machines. Just the soft crunch of ancient dust beneath their boots. Ruined towers stood like bones around them, cracked by centuries of wind and memory. Kari held a glowing orb in her hand, guiding their path through the forgotten ruins. Ethan whispered, "What is this place?" And Kari answered without turning her head, "A sanctuary, once. For those who held the bond, but it was erased, hidden so no one could find it again." Ethan followed her closely, the air feeling heavy on his chest. Not because of danger, but because the place itself seemed to remember things. As they moved deeper, strange symbols lit up on the walls. Reacting to Kari's presence, then to Ethan's, they pulsed softly. Like they were welcoming something that had finally returned. Kari led him into a large underground chamber where a ring of stone pillars circled a tall, glowing structure, shaped like a flame. "This is the heart of Valdros," she said quietly. "It holds the memories of the first bond between your kind and mine." Ethan stepped forward, and the air shimmered around him. The symbols on the walls danced, and a deep voice echoed from the pillars. Not in words, but in feelings, in memories. Suddenly, Ethan saw flashes in his mind, not dreams, but visions. Humans and aliens standing together. Hands joined, facing. A giant storm in the stars, their energy connected in glowing lines. Weapons made from light and will. Entire armies driven back by unity. Then came betrayal, fire, and silence. He stumbled backward, shaking. What was that? He gasped, and Kari caught him, steadying him with gentle hands. "Your blood remembered," she said. "The spark inside you was once used to protect galaxies, not just one city or one person." Ethan looked at her, breathless. "So why? Did it disappear?" he asked. Kari's voice dropped lower, "Because power makes rulers afraid," she said. "Your ancestors were wiped out. Just like mine, because they believed in something greater than control." Ethan sat on the edge of a broken pillar, staring into the light. "And now it's back," he said, more to himself than to her. Far above them, hidden in orbit, a shadow ship blinked into view, its dark metal shaped like blades, invisible to most sensors inside it. Cold eyes watched Ethan's presence on the planet. Signals were sent, weapons warmed, and a voice whispered, "The last key has been found, back in the chamber." Ethan placed his hand on the central structure, and the light rose up, wrapping around his arm. Climbing toward his shoulder, it didn't hurt, but it wasn't comfortable either. Kari stepped back, her eyes wide. "You're unlocking it," she said. "I didn't think it would respond to you this fast." I didn't think any of this would happen at all, Ethan muttered, and then the structure burst with light beams, shooting toward the ceiling. Symbols rewriting themselves in glowing language. Then, out of the stone, rose a suit part armor. Part energy, ancient and beautiful. It hovered in the air, waiting for him. Kari bowed her head, whispering that was meant only for the bonded. Protector Ethan reached toward the armor, but before he could touch it, a sudden pain struck his chest, and he collapsed, visions flooding his mind again, this time showing Karina as she was but as a queen in a time not yet written. He gasped awake, grabbing her hand. You become something more, he said. I saw it. Kari frowned, confused. But before she could speak, the ground shook. Alarms rang for the first time in 1,000 years. Something had found them. The sky outside cracked with thunder as a massive ship descended, dropping machines and armed forces. Their banners bearing the mark of the Red Eye and ancient cult that had destroyed the old bond long ago. They had waited generations for the spark to rise again, and now they were here to kill it before it could grow. Kari pulled Ethan to his feet, the suit still floating nearby, calling to him silently. You have to wear it now, she said. Even if you're not ready. Ethan looked at the armor. Then at the glowing woman beside him. What if I fail? He asked. She stepped closer, touching his face gently. You already didn't, she said. You took the blasts, you didn't run, and now. The legacy chooses you. Outside, weapons charged, engines roared, and the sky began to burn inside. Ethan reached toward the ancient armor, his hand trembling, and the moment he touched it, everything changed. She stood behind him, silent, the tip of her weapon aimed at the back of his neck. Her fingers shaking, her heart louder than the storm. Outside, Ethan didn't turn around, didn't speak, didn't even breathe too hard. He already knew what was happening. He could feel it in the air between them. Kari had been acting strange since they escaped Valdras. She spoke less, stared longer, and avoided his eyes when he talked. Ethan had trusted her with everything his. Life, his future, his truth. But now, with his armor still glowing around him and enemies hunting them from all sides, he realized she was hiding something more than fear. The night before, Kari had disappeared for hours, while Ethan slept inside the hidden shelter they found. Now he knew where she had gone, not to scout for supplies, but to meet someone who offered her a way out. A deal, a trade. All she had to do was deliver the human bonded with the ancient spark. Her people's elders had sent a secret message. Their voices full of cold promises. Give us the human, and we'll forgive your blood, they said. Let us extract what he carries, and we will name you queen again. Kari had stared at the screen for a long time before closing it without a word. Now the moment had come. Ethan stood in front of a control panel, trying to repair the jump drive of their stolen ship. Kari's blade hummed in the air behind him. She could end it all now. One strike, one order fulfilled. Her name restored, her safety secured, and no more running. But she couldn't move. Not because of weakness, but because of memory. Her mind screamed with the image of him shielding her from the laser blasts, bleeding in her arms, whispering run with his last breath. No one had ever done that for her, not guards, not teachers, not even family, just him. Do it, Ethan said softly, not turning around. If you're going to, just do it. His voice wasn't angry or afraid, just tired. Tired of running. Tired of being hunted. Tired of carrying power. He didn't ask for. Kari lowered her hand slightly, the blade dipping. I can't, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought I could, but I can't. Ethan turned slowly and looked into her eyes. There was pain there, but no betrayal. Only guilt. She dropped the weapon with a heavy breath and fell to her knees. I'm sorry, she said. They promised me everything, and I still chose you. Ethan knelt beside her, his voice calm. "You didn't choose me," he said. "You chose yourself, the part of you that wanted to. Be free." The part they tried to kill. Kari wiped a tear from her cheek and nodded slowly, then reached into her cloak and handed him a small chip, glowing faint red. "What's this?" he asked. "Their kill command," she answered. "They were going to shut down your armor from orbit if I failed." Ethan crushed it under his boot without hesitation. The sparks scattered across the floor. Useless now, like the deal that almost broke her. Outside, thunder cracked again, and the storm above roared louder. Their ship began to lift, its jump drive finally working. Ethan took the pilot's seat, Kari beside him, silent but stronger now. No more lies, no more secrets. Between them, just choices made and the road ahead. They jumped across systems faster than any patrol could track, and arrived in a broken starfield called the Bleed, where laws meant nothing and monsters whispered across open channels. It was the only place left where they could find the last piece of truth. A historian who lived in exile. Someone who once wrote about the spark and the first bond before the galaxy burned his books and exiled his name. The historian's station floated alone near a dying sun, covered in rust and sealed doors. Kari sent a message code, and after a long silence, the door opened with a groan. Inside stood a very old alien with sunken eyes and silver vines growing from his skin. He stared at Ethan, then at the armor, then whispered, "I never thought I'd see one of you again." He led them into a quiet chamber filled with old scrolls, star maps, and blinking lights, and then told them a truth. Neither expected. The bond between human and royal alien was more than history. It was prophecy. And prophecy always demanded a sacrifice. Kari tensed. "What kind of sacrifice?" she asked. But the historian only looked at Ethan and said, "His blood won't be the last to fall." Ethan stood, fists clenched, eyes burning. "Then let them come," he said. "I didn't take the spark to run anymore." And Kari stood beside him, her voice steady again. "Neither did I." They didn't know who would strike next, or how hard. But this time, they were no longer just survivors. They were a bond reborn, and that was enough to make the stars tremble. The sky didn't just burn, it screamed. Red lightning cracked through the clouds, and giant ships tore through the upper atmosphere like gods returning for war. The stars above Valdros dimmed under the shadow of a fleet designed to erase history, and somewhere in the heart of that storm, a human stood in ancient armor, waiting. Ethan didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man wearing armor too old, carrying power too big, and standing beside a girl who had every reason to leave him behind but didn't. Kari tightened the straps on her arm blades, her eyes focused on the growing fire in the sky. This was the final stand. There would be no running this time. They stood together at the ruins of Valdros, where the first bond had once been born. Now surrounded by the last defense drones the station could activate. Broken machines held together by code older than language, but they rose anyway. Because Ethan was there, and the spark inside him was singing. Across the valley, the cult of the Red Eye deployed its ground forces. Machines shaped like beasts, warriors with burning weapons, and towering siege-walkers that crushed stone with every step above them. A voice echoed through every channel. "Cold and hungry. Human, surrender. The bond. Or watch her die for your mistake." Ethan didn't answer. He just stepped forward, raising his hand, and the ground cracked. The ancient technology responded to his presence with blue energy lines stretching across the field, one by one, forgotten. Cannons lit up again, and the sky lit with the color of resistance. Kari didn't stay behind. She ran into battle beside him, blades slicing, energy bursting from her palms, every movement precise and deadly. This was no longer a civilian. This was the last heir of Sauron, fighting beside the last bonded human, not as protector and royalty, but as partners. The battle exploded, lasers and missiles flying through the air. Dust and blood rising, Ethan took blast after blast. His armor burning but holding. He used the spark not as a weapon, but as a shield. Protecting Kari, protecting the last pieces of their shared legacy. But even legends bleed. And soon, Ethan was on one knee. Smoke rising from his suit, one eye swollen shut. Kari reached him, dragging him behind a fallen wall. Her hands shaking as she tried to stop the bleeding. "Don't. You dare die now," she whispered. "You already did that once." Ethan smiled weakly. "Worth it," he whispered. "I'd do it again." And then the ground shook harder than ever before. A final ship dropped from the clouds, a massive dreadnought with a core weapon aimed straight at them. One blast would erase Valdros. Erase everything. Kari stood, staring at the beast in the sky, then turned to Ethan, her face full of pain and purpose. "We can't let them win," she said, "even if we die." Ethan reached for her hand, gripping it tight. "Then let's show them what a coward and a runaway girl can do." Together, they moved to the central core of Valdros, where the last of the planet's ancient energy was stored. Kari placed her hand on the control panel, and Ethan placed his over hers. The spark flared between them, light rising high into the air, visible even from orbit. The enemy weapon fired just as the spark exploded, forming a shield so massive it covered the entire valley. The blast hit the light and shattered. The dreadnought cracked and fell in pieces, and the battlefield went silent. Every soldier, every hunter, every machine frozen. Then, one by one, they dropped their weapons, not out of fear, but because something inside them changed. The spark didn't just protect, it awakened. And across the stars, systems that had forgotten the old ways began to remember. Ethan collapsed, but this time, Kari caught him. Her arms tight around his chest. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You survived again." He laughed softly. "You're heavy," he mumbled, and she laughed too, for the first time in days. Not out of shock or madness, but from hope. News of what happened on Valdros spread like wildfire, not as a military report, but as a legend. A human who took the blasts. A girl who could have betrayed him, but chose love instead. And a bond that changed the galaxy again. Ethan never asked for glory, and Kari never wanted a crown. But what they built together was more than thrones or medals. It was a reason for others to believe again, to fight, to love, to stand between fear and hope. And long after the fires faded, after the ships left the sky, and peace began to grow from ashes, people still told the story of the human who didn't run away, who took the blasts for an alien girl land, how what happened next truly was worth the risk.